Back on midday with your weekly installment of News to You. Black Hawk Down, the stores we used to shop in, and the last Carrols Restaurant in the area announced it would close. Those are among the stories that made news this very week in decades past. Channel 2's Dave McKinley takes us back to when it was all news to you.
Would you believe it was 10 years ago this week when enrollment began for Obamacare, which mandated you buy health insurance or be fined by the federal government? You might also recall how the website to enroll promptly crashed.
I'm not getting anywhere.
Nor was anyone at the Capitol because, a government shutdown due again to disagreements over spending. Among the critical workers who still had to report were those of the National Weather Service, who sent cryptic messages in forecast bulletins like this one, where the first letters in each line taken together spelled out, "Please pay us." Meanwhile, frustrated tourists finding parks and museums closed managed to find their own ways around barriers, even when their elected representatives could not. Oh, and here's how Harbor Center looked when it was still a full 2 years away from completion this week in 2013. 20 years ago this week, no less than 10 Democratic hopefuls for the party's nomination for president the next year bellied up to the debate stage. Do you remember them all? Well, let's see who we got here. Along with Bob Graham, Carol Mosley Braun, John Edwards, Dick Gephardt, Joe Lieberman, Al Sharpton, Dennis Kucinich, Wesley Clark, Howard Dean, and the eventual nominee, John Kerry, as they appeared this week in 2003. Ever hear of the movie Black Hawk Down? Well, 30 years ago this week was when that really happened. At the Battle of Mogadishu, where the helicopters of U.S. soldiers on what was supposed to be a humanitarian mission to feed starving Somalis were shot down. 18 killed, 73 wounded, the largest number of U.S. forces lost in a battle since the Vietnam War. It happened weeks after President Clinton had called the mission in Somalia a success, and now he had to turn his attention to the fate of soldiers held captive.
We expect them to be well treated.
They would not be. Their bodies dragged through the streets and defiled, indelible images, enough to turn stomachs.
It's disgusting.
And make blood boil.
Why let the Somalis drag more dead GIs by ropes through the streets of Mogadishu, kicking and spitting on them?
Despite calls for withdrawal, Clinton refused and actually sent more troops to a mission that the UN would pull out of, due in part to the ghastly events that occurred this week. In 1993. 40 years ago this week, the Sabres began their season with a rookie in the nets. All of 18 years old, he'd be the first goalie ever taken right out of high school in the first round of the NHL draft.
He has a lot of confidence, and it made a lot of sense to start him.
Turned out to be a wise move by Scotty Bowman as Tom Barrasso went on to win both the Calder and Vezina trophies in his first season in the league. Maybe after the game, you head to Howard Johnson's for a dish or a cone. If you remember Howard Johnson's, you might know the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz, which is, how many flavors of ice cream did Howard Johnson serve in their once ubiquitous orange-roofed restaurants? Remember, this was back when we shopped at stores like Hens and Kelly, Twin Fair, Sattler's, Sibley's, Gold Circle, and Hills, and when we ate at Carrols, home of the Club Burger, the very last of which in the entire chain was located in Batavia, and which announced it would close this week in 1983, marking the end of a fast food era in the days when this was all news to you.
Thank you, Dave. So here's the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz. Patrick, how many flavors? What's your guess?
Oh my gosh.
Because I didn't remember.
42.
28.
Oh. Okay.
You overshot it by a bit.
Okay.
That's okay. That's how many flavors that Howard Johnson's had of its original ice cream at its restaurants with those distinctive orange roofs. During the 60s and throughout much of the 70s, it was the largest restaurant chain here in the U.S. The last Howard Johnson's restaurant in Lake George closed last year, so it was still going strong.
Okay.